So welcome everybody. This is the 45-minute intro to the longer 6-week class called A Voyage Through Chakras with the Realization Process. And basically the premise of this class is that we're going to learn how to experience our chakra system or different energy centers or points or vortexes, that we can actually feel that live in the internal space of the body. And in some esoteric systems, they would also say, our chakra systems are part of the subtle body. But basically, you're definitely going to feel a subtle level of your own experience. And that's what chakras are. They're subtle. We could define them without talking about subtle bodies necessarily. We could define them as a subtle level of our experience. That we could say that they're vortexes or points that have a kind of heightened quality of aliveness to them. And they have other attributes also, but we can, just in everyday language, if somebody says that they have a broken heart, for example, they're not talking about their physical heart, really. They're talking about the heart center. At least that's my view on it. Who here feels like they've experienced chakra points in the past at any point in one way or another? Yeah. Doesn't have to be all of them. I don't even know if there is, if we know, because there are some chakras that seem to be above the top of the head, or people that can experience energy centers above the top of the head. And I don't know how many are above the top of the head. So, but in terms of the major ones, what does anybody feel like you want to share some of your experiences, or like what some of your experiences have been with regard to experiencing chakra points or energy centers? And if Eleanor, go ahead.
Yeah. In 2021, I required surgery on my pelvic floor, and that had to do with some a lot of stress that was going on in my life. And I was doing a ton of work with the root chakra, and I could really feel energetic shifts happening when I would point my attention there over long periods of time. And I also noticed that my intuition seems to live in my solar plexus, which is another chakra point.
Yeah, beautiful. Yep. Yeah. And definitely, when areas of our body are tight, and my sense of that is that the fascia is what gets tight, and that is a response to stress that we have. Anyway, well, we can get more into this in the class itself, but that when we do energy work, we're focusing on specific chakras, it can help us, relax certain parts of our body, or even provoke a kind of subtle healing. So that's really cool. Yeah. And with regard to the solar plexus, when people talk about gut feelings, we're talking about qualities, different kinds of intelligence that we might have, different attributes or qualities of being. And all of these seem to have a relationship to different energy centers or points in the body. Has that been everybody's experience here to one degree or another? Okay. All right. So, and if I do say anything that doesn't resonate or that you have questions about, you can just feel free to let me know. All right. So I've got just a few slides to share with everybody today. Give me 1 second. Okay. So who here, by the way, has never done a realization process class before, ever? Okay. Misha, no? I think we've done classes together before, and we've done realization process exercises. Okay. Okay. All right. So yeah, so all of you are familiar to the realization process. And in case anybody watching this is not, realization process is a set of exercises that was created by Judith Blackstone, who is a psychotherapist for many years, now in retirement from psychotherapy, but basically has been developing this experiential system of embodied non-dual awakening for the past 40 years or so. And chakras or energy centers factor into that because when we can feel into the root point, not just the vortex or emanations of the chakras that feel like they're more towards the surface of the body, but we could say like the center points or the root points of each chakra, which feel like they're along the vertical core of the body, right? Those can give us an entryway into what we could call what's been referred to as like boundless space, the ground of our being, boundless consciousness, fundamental consciousness is what Judith Blackstone likes to call it. But basically, it's the sense of you could call it a core level of being that feels like a mixture of presence and emptiness. And we could say it's an unbound field of consciousness. It feels like it's the deepest level of our personal consciousness, but it also feels like an expanse of consciousness that pervades all of our experience. We could say that the way that I like to express this is that when we go deep enough inside to feel this, these qualities of stillness or perfect balance or silence, and we can feel that in the core of our body, where these different chakra points live. When we can feel that internally and we really open into it, it's almost like the inside becomes the outside, right? We find a depth of ourselves where if we rest there, it's like a light switch turns on, and then we can feel this kind of boundless space of consciousness that pervades and suffuses all of our experience. And it simultaneously helps us feel a deeper sense of enlivenment through our whole mind-body energy system. So can anybody relate to that experience to one extent or another? Anybody had that experience of like a field that transcends inside and outside? Okay. All right. Beautiful. Okay. So I see a hand raised. Cecilia, go ahead.
No, I was agreeing.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, sounds good. All right. So just for just to have a clear definition, what are chakras, right? For those of you who might be watching this and who have never experienced a chakra point, or who are confused because they're described differently among different systems, I think the minimalist experiential definition would be something like this. They're points in the body or subtle body in some paradigms that are generally the same for everybody. So when we're talking about the head center, we're talking about a chakra that is, we're not talking about the brow chakra here, but a deeper level of perhaps the same energy center. But it feels as if it's between the centers of the ears, perhaps slightly further back, and right like towards the back of the brain. Okay. And that location is roughly the same for everybody. Same thing with the heart center. The heart center we find slightly above the lower part of the sternum. Okay. And that seems to be roughly the same for everybody. There's also, the high heart center. Well, we're not going to get into all the locations, but these locations do seem to be the same for everybody. Another attribute is that they carry a more potent quality of aliveness than other centers in the body. For example, when we, aliveness or other perhaps emotional qualities or qualities of being. So for example, when we have when we feel emotionally wounded, we might say, I have a broken heart. We don't say I have a broken left toe, right? And so that's because that particular quality seems to resonate there in the heart center, and that seems to be universal. Okay. We can feel love through, and this is point 4 here, that well, let me just go to point 3 for a second. Major chakras exist along the subtle vertical core of the body, and those are entry points into the ground of our being. Okay. And maybe anywhere in the internal space of the body is an entryway into the ground of our being, but I find that the major chakras, and I think this is also a pretty common human experience, for people that do this work, the major chakras along the subtle vertical core seem to be more easily points that are more easy, that where we can more easily access that ground. Okay. Major chakras also have unique relationships to different qualities of being. So, like I said before, and like we've talked about, we can experience love through the whole body, but the heart center is where it seems to radiate or be more. It seems to be more centered there. Okay. All right. Any questions on this? And so, like, in other words, if you experience any of these, if you experience these four attributes, or even just a few of these attributes in relation to a point in your body, you are experiencing a chakra, right? That's how I've crafted this definition. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, I have a question in the chat.
Oh, uh-huh. Okay. Um, that's a great question. Are they tied to specific body parts or separate from? Um, so like it wouldn't surprise me at all, and I think it's very likely that different chakras are related to different organs in some way, but I don't know how that is. Like um, maybe 500 years in the future, we'll have an anatomy textbook and like a subtle anatomy textbook that is like, how it actually works. But I don't know the answer to that. I just know that these are, chakras. They relate to locations in the body, and they're a specific flavor of energetic experience, and that's what I know about them. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they were related to different parts of the body. For example, Eleanor, you yourself said that your pelvic floor relaxed when you did work with one specific chakra, right?
Right. And I was actually really specifically wondering if the one in the brain is associated with a specific part of the brain, like amygdala or something.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, now I am referring to my own experience here, but it wouldn't. I would bet everybody here $1 that that chakra probably has something to do with the hindbrain, and and perhaps some of the functions of what those structures do. Yeah, I would bet $1 on that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right. So the specific approach of this class is going to involve exploring the three major functions of each major chakra point. And we'll get into the whole circuitry of the body. There's what we could call what I'm calling, for the purposes of this class, more minor chakras in the hands and feet. And you could say that there's a chakra in the tip of each finger, and if you really drill down, there's some traditions that say that each each pore of the skin is its own small chakra point. But for the purposes of this class, we're going to be focusing mainly on the major chakras and the minor chakras in the hands and feet. And there's going to be three attributes that we're going to explore, especially in the major chakra points. Number one, there are nodes of a very fine and subtle life energy that can enliven our whole mind-body energy system. And you could say that when we activate our energy system at this level, we can feel things like vibrational clearings. That's how some traditions or some schools of thought describe it. In the realization process, some of these exercises are called core breath, or core breath with subtle circuitry. And what that means is that we're finding a very fine energetic quality that feels as if a deep level of the mind that suffuses the whole body is breathing. It's not an ordinary everyday experience. It's a you could say that we're doing esoteric phenomenology here. These are fine, subtle experiences that are not necessarily everyday experiences. And so that this breath-like energy is something that we can feel at each chakra point. Resonance, singing. I mean, as a metaphor, each chakra seems to have its own frequency also. And so we're going to tap into that and experience the unique frequency of each chakra. So that's sort of like the energetic dimension of each chakra. And there's also the dimension of qualities of being or qualities of our authentic self. So, as I said before, the heart chakras, it helps us experience our quality of love. The solar plexus center helps us experience our quality of power. Just to make things more confusing, we can feel an emotional quality that's kind of like love, but it's kind of also like being held. And that can be experienced in the solar plexus also. And also, the third way that we're going to experience different chakras is as entry points into the ground of our being. And so, you could say that each point is a mixture of aliveness and stillness. And the stillness, as we sink into the quality of stillness, that's what allows us to enter into our ground of being by getting into that space that feels like it's our deepest level inside. And then if we let go just a little bit more, or rest into that stillness a little bit more, you know, something, I don't know if you want to call it a veil, a veil lifts or a light switch comes on, and then, oh, there's that field that's pervades our whole field of experience. Okay. A lot of classes involve visualizing chakras. And if you already have your visual sense developed, that's great. Or if you're clairvoyant to some degree, great. And since in my experience, there's not as much attention to the tactile sense, this sort of a subtle tactile vibrational sense that we feel inside the body and surrounding the body. That's what we're going to give focus to in this class. Okay. We could say that feeling these centers is its own form of subjectivity. We're tapping into a subjectivity that's deep in the body, and that can help us cultivate intuition and a kind of sensitivity and embodiment of our authentic self. Okay, so that's going to be more the focus. Is that clear to everybody so far? Okay. In terms of logistics, each class is 90 minutes. There's 6 classes total, and the majority of each class will be purely practical. So the class time will consist of an intro to each exercise, what it's supposed to do. We'll practice the exercise, and then have Q&A or discussion. And there's also 2 one-on-one sessions outside of class that are included, and those are 30 minutes each. And the purpose of that is just to give you any personalized support you might want. If you have something sensitive you want to discuss outside of class, or if there's more personalized guidance that you need on experiencing a certain chakra or quality of being, or if you're having issues finding the kind of that field of stillness that pervades inside and outside. And this is what the progressive skill building looks like for the class itself. And to make sure that everybody is building these core skills in a methodical way, we're going to be following the below outline in terms of what each exercise will do. So I think the first distinction that's helpful, and that's somewhat unique to realization process, is learning the difference and actually experiencing the difference between being aware of the body and being present through the internal space of our body. So, and maybe we'll do that exercise today just to demonstrate what that's like. The second thing we're going to do, once we have a sense of what it's like to really inhabit the body, then we're going to rest back into a level or into a depth. And actually, here let me just illustrate this on the chart. So I actually need to move this line further back in the drawing. But basically, it's behind the midline, right? The subtle core of the body feels like it's quite far back. And we could talk about the subtle core as having a locational depth, which feels like it's, again, behind the midline, somewhere close to the inner part of the spine. in most cases, although it feels more like a straight line than something that's on a curve. And as you could say, there's also a qualitative depth to it, which means that it feels like a place in our body that's free of any tension or strain. And this subtle vertical channel, um, it feels like it. You could say that. I know this sounds almost silly, but one of the ways that you can know that you're feeling it is that it feels smooth, right? If we rest back into it, there's a kind of textural smoothness to it. And we can also feel things emerge there like bliss, a sense of fundamental well-being, the sense that we're tapping into part of us that's never been injured. These are all different qualities that just seem to be there in this core level of our being. And so then we're going to experience each different chakra point. And as I mentioned before, we can feel different attributes like vibrational resonance, the subtle breath-like quality, a subtle quality in each chakra point that's similar to singing, the resonance between major and minor chakras, the resonance of really the whole subtle circuitry of the body, that gives us kind of that vibrational clearing. If you ever hear in New Age circles, we're raising our vibrational frequency. Well, that's what we're doing here, right? And also tuning into essential qualities of being in different aspects of or different segments of the body, and knowing how these qualities of being are distinguished from dynamic qualities. So, for example, right, just to give a little illustration of this, there are some classes that aim to stimulate, for example, the chakras that are related to sex and gender. Okay. And what they're doing is stimulating the dynamic qualities or potencies of those centers. In this class, we're going to have discussions and practice that helps us experience, for example, our qualities of gender and sexuality as qualities of being. And what that means is that, we talk about our quality of love, for example, in our chest. That love doesn't have to go anywhere. It doesn't have to do anything. It's sort of like an engine turned on in neutral. Okay. And so for our quality of sexuality, to me, it was quite interesting to experience this quality of sexuality as a quality of being versus something that, sometimes sexual energy is something that you have to kind of, you have to massage it a bit, you have to get yourself excited, if you will. You have to do something to make that energy happen. Whereas the quality of being of sexuality is something that's just already there in the background. Some people describe it as a kind of just a natural creativity, or like a feeling of being generative, something like that, like generation. And quality of gender, same thing. We're not talking about any conceptual sense of gender or gender roles or anything like that, but it's a quality of being that feels like coming home to yourself, right? It feels like just a sense of, you could call it a frequency, a quality of wholeness that is also whatever your gender feels like to you. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody in terms of the difference between qualities of dynamic activity versus qualities of being? Okay. All right. And also, as I've mentioned a few times, experiencing major chakras as a gateway into the ground of our being. And so that's it. That's the outline of the class. And since we've got about 20 minutes left, I thought we could all do a little exercise, or maybe 2 exercises if we're ambitious here. Are there any questions before we get into the exercises? Misha, go ahead.
Yeah, how many are the number of major chakras we're going to be dealing with?
That's a great question. So, base chakra, the sacral center, pelvic center. And that's something from realization process. It's like it's between chakras 2 and 3 in the Hindu system. It's like at the level of the hara, but at the depth of the inner part of the spine. Navel center, solar plexus, heart center, high heart center, throat center B, head center, okay. And then there's like head center B, crown chakra, 8th chakra, 9th chakra. Yeah, so those are the major chakras we'll be working with. And some of those might sound unfamiliar. And in my experience, like and this kind of begs the question of, well, what qualifies something as a chakra? And it's generally um, where human beings who are attuned to these subtle realms of experience seem to feel higher concentrations of vitality. And so that's my postmodern-ish definition of what a chakra is. I'm not referencing any system. I'm just referencing, our direct experience. And so anyway, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. How you if you decide to take the class, how you experience these and which ones feel more powerful to you. For example, the pelvic center that we work with in realization process, at the level of the hara, to me that feels like it has a lot more power to it than the sacral chakra seems to in the Hindu system. Maybe for other people it's different. So okay, any more questions about that before we move on? No. Okay. All right. So we're going to do 2 exercises if we've got time. I think we've got time for both of them. The first exercise is to help you inhabit your body and notice the difference between that and being aware of your body. Okay. The second exercise is to help you find at least some of the qualities of the subtle core of the body. Okay. And don't worry if you don't feel if you don't feel like your Sushumna on fire or something, radiating with celestial light or whatever. Don't worry about that. Okay. So if the goal here is just to see if you can find some of the qualities of that experience. Okay. All right. So let's come sit up. Okay. So, and you can rest your hands on your lap. And so the first thing we'll do is become aware of our hands. In being aware of your hands, you might notice different sensations, temperature, texture. Movements of air in the room. Just notice what it's like to be aware of your hands. Good. Okay. Now, I'm going to invite you to feel what it's like to be present within your hands. What is it like to live within the internal space of your hands? One way of describing this experience is as if your hands are aware of themselves. Anybody is having a challenge with this, see if you can feel what it would be like for your hands to radiate a soft light, for them to glow from within. We're not shooting lasers out of our hands, just a soft glow. And see what that feels like. Good. Oh, good. So, to whatever degree you feel like you're able to inhabit your hands and feel present within your hands, see if you can gently begin to rest back through the whole internal space of your body. And to do this, see if you can feel a level of consciousness that already seems to be there in your body, so that your legs feel themselves, your pelvis feels itself, your torso, your midsection and your chest, your shoulders and your arms feel themselves from the inside. And your neck and your head feel themselves from the inside. And our ordinary awareness is just sinking back into a deeper kind of presence that's already there. Or we could say a deeper kind of consciousness that's already there. Okay. Tuning into our textural sense to feel a subtle space that pervades the whole body, and that this subtle space is aware, or it is consciousness, we could say. The subtle space that pervades the internal space of the body, it is a form of consciousness, deeper than the thinking mind. See if you can feel that textural sense through the whole internal space of your body at once. Good. Okay. All right. So, second exercise. I'm going to invite you to experience, by experience, I mean like mentally locate, find all the space that's to the left of you, even with your eyes closed. Again, we're using this textural sense, using our whole body, locating the space to the left of us. Okay. And now find the space to the right of you. And now experience the space to the right and the space to the left simultaneously. And see if that draws forth a quality of balance in the core of your body as you experience the space to the left and the space to the right simultaneously. Yep. And just notice where in the internal space of your body you experience that perfect balance. Okay. Now find the space in front of you, again, using your whole body, whole being textural sense. Experience the space in front of you. And now tune into the space behind you. Okay. And find the space in front of you and the space behind you simultaneously. And see from where in your body can you experience both the space behind you and the space in front of you without any strain. You might feel quite far back, even further back than the midline. Good. And see if you can experience a line of perfect balance through your torso, neck, and head. It feels like a space from which we can experience the space to the left, the space to the right, the space to the back, and the space to the front without any strain whatsoever. Okay. And within this line of perfect balance, I'm going to invite you to find or to settle back into your heart center, which is in the center of the chest. And it feels like it's close to the inner part of the spine, but it's along this line of perfect balance. Okay, let's see if we can settle back into it there. It's above the lower part of the sternum, about at that level. Now, attune to your quality of love in your chest, which means see if you can feel a kind of warmth, acceptance, something like that, tenderness that already lives in the internal space of your chest. It's already there in the background, like a little pilot light. See if you can feel that. And see if you can feel where that pilot light begins. The innermost depth as to where that pilot light begins. Now, there are some schools that we could say send that energy outwards, which is fine. That's one exercise we can do. In this exercise, I'm going to invite you to rest back into the quality of love, however you experience it: warmth, sweetness, acceptance, tenderness. Any of those qualities are fine. I'm going to invite you to rest back into the quality so that you can start to feel it suffusing your whole body at once. And if we rest back into it, we're only using enough effort to do that, a kind of relaxed effort. That should be enough to help this quality begin to suffuse the body all at once on its own. You can really allow yourself to settle back and down into your heart center. In some ways, this might feel like a coming home, that it allows us to sink into a deeper level of being that feels fundamentally safe and at ease. We don't have to suppress any of our emotional life to do this. It's something that's already there in the background and that um, helps us move through any difficult situation or difficult emotion that we might have, without suppressing anything. Okay, good. All right, very good, everybody. And as you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. As you open your eyes, see if you can just stay present through the internal space of your body, settled back into your heart center. Just to bring some of that with you as you open your eyes. Okay, all right. And relax. Okay. How did that go? Any questions, comments, feedback? Misha, go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed As I was sitting there at the pilot light kind of area, there was one time where there was kind of like a movement of fear, like kind of bouncing away from it, like, oh no, it's too scary to do that.
Mm.
Um,
Uh, And when you say a movement of fear bouncing away, does that mean that you were resting into the point and you felt resilient to the fear and it bounced away? Or do you mean there was fear bouncing you away from the point?
the second, it's
Yeah.
like your child scared part. It's like, oh no, it's not safe to be like that relaxed or whatever. And so then my presence in that aspect of me pulled away from the experience of the heart center, but then it was able to relax back.
Oh, okay. So you got there eventually.
Yeah, I was there. Then there was a fear response and pulling away, partially pulling away, and then settling back in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And that's pretty normal. Yeah. Um, I mean, for those of you who have done the some other classes with me, um, my sense of this is that uh, part of feeling safe is feeling the safety that's in the core of our being. That's part of what it is. And the other part of feeling safe is resolving whatever conditioning we might have that tells us that we shouldn't feel safe with something, right? If it's, in other words, well, and sometimes when we don't feel safe, it's because we're we're not safe in that situation, and we should get out of there. But in some situations where we're doing a meditation exercise, or there's really there's no real danger, and we don't feel safe, then usually that's an item of conditioning that we can, this class won't focus on that directly, but it can help. Yeah. All right. Cool. Anybody else before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, sure. I found that that location was very close to a location that often hurts when I'm sitting in meditation. So there was some conflict in pointing my attention there continuously. And then once I was able to land in front of the spine, it felt like very empty. And I thought, is love just the absence of anything else? It wasn't like blissful, it was just nothing.
Hmm. Um, I feel like there's stillness in the heart center. Um, when you say nothing, like, is it like a nice Buddhist nothing, or is it like a kind of suspicious nothing?
It was very matter of fact. Whereas
Okay.
when we were doing the exercise of feeling the whole line
Yep.
in all directions, it felt really gel and I could feel that like breathing, ooey gooey loveliness.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. We might need to talk more about that, about what that means, because yeah. I mean, have you? I would guess that you've had some experiences of love in the heart center in the past. Uh, I mean, have you?
I find that the idea of the heart to be very confusing.
Okay. Yeah. Sometimes to stimulate that quality, um, it's it can be helpful to imagine something that you naturally feel affinity towards, like a puppy or a kitten, or something that just is so innocent that you can't help but love whatever that is.
Yeah, that is helpful. And that did come to mind because that's what I do in metta practice. But then I
Yep.
was like, oh, I'm not doing that. I'm doing just the feeling into the space. So then I kind of rejected that idea.
Yeah, no, your intuition's spot on. Yeah, I mean, I know I mentioned before that these are tactile exercises mainly, but sometimes visualization can help to stimulate the tactile response.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Anyone else before we wrap up?
Well, I just had a question about recommended homework practice periods.
Hmm.
How much do you recommend in general? Would you?
Well, you're gonna have the tracks, like you'll have the recordings. So I'd say, it, 10 to 30 minutes a day or almost every day. If you can do that. Yeah. Yeah, I would say that that's a good amount. You know, I think that one helpful practice tip is to, number one is to determine what your goal really is. Because if you take a class, I mean, my belief is that if you take a class, it should be for whatever your spiritual goals are, or goals in general. And so then if your goal, for example, is, well, I want, I want to understand these practices as a means of experiencing fundamental well-being, then in each practice, it might be good to just make mental note of like, okay, so like, what is this quality that I'm experiencing now? Oh, it feels okay. So as I kind of rest back into my body and relax my mental grip, I can feel something that's like gentleness. Ah, okay. Yeah, that's the right direction. Like that's how I tend to work with these practices. And then to me internally, without any external teacher telling me anything, it's like, okay, this is what I want. Now I know that this practice is doing what I want it to do. All right, cool. Well, listen, thank you everybody for showing up. And if you want to sign up for the larger class, then you can just feel free to shoot me an email if you have any more questions about it. And I think everybody here has got the sign up link already if you'd like to sign up.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a wonderful weekend, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you,
Okay.
Michael.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Mike.
you.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.